Stan Irvin here at Stan Irvin's Unique Clay Works in Rockport, Texas. I'm in the studio today thinking about small things that I can make very simply to fit in and around larger pieces in the kiln, just to utilize the kiln space more efficiently. I started thinking about soap dishes. I suppose it's kind of relevant to our time these days since we spend a lot of time washing our hands. And I actually went to the trouble to measure a bar of soap so that I could make a depression into this one-piece slab construction that would accommodate a bar of soap. And then I cut another piece of wood a little bigger to just act as the border around the edges. I think you'll see how that works as I do this. It's very simple. The reason you want to make that a little bigger than the actual bar of soap is because clay shrinks as it dries and shrinks more as it's fired. So I'm going to begin here just forming this clay into a block. Probably takes a little bit of doing to get this working for you. You could use a rubber mallet to pound the clay out if you wanted, or you could use a rolling pin with a couple of sticks to either side. But you do have to start with a thick block of clay. Now I want this block of clay a little bigger than this block of wood. So I'm going to stretch that out. You notice the clay stretching in the direction that you throw it. Now it might be a little rounded on the bottom edges, so I'm going to be careful about pounding that down so that the clay actually meets the surface of the table. Now I have this little wire. Now this is a mud tool, but you can make your own. I've made them using all kinds of springs that you can get at the hardware store. Springs and ballpoint pens, if you just stretch them out, they'll make a nice little wiggle wire. But for this, I'm just going to use this store-bought tool. And I'm going to pull it through, but I want that clay to be even thickness, so I'm going to use my fingers as a guide. And so that's going to be about probably a 1/4 inch thick or so. You can pull it straight through, or you can pull it at a slight angle and get a beautiful pattern. Now that in itself starts out really kind of nice, so you can might think of all kinds of other things that you might make with the slab textured with that beautiful texture on it. I'm going to go ahead and cut the edges down. This of course could be any shape, but I want to get it down to about the size of that block of wood. I could place this on there and cut around it, but then that would destroy the texture. Now, while I have it flat, I want to take a damp sponge and go around and soften the edges. It's always easier to finish edges while the clay is flat than to try to do it after it's formed a shape. So that part is pretty much done. Now to get the depression in the middle, I'm just going to take this piece of foam rubber. It's about a 1-inch thick piece of foam rubber. I'm going to lay that there, and I'm going to take this other block, which is the size of the soap dish plus 12%, and I'm going to place it in the center. Now I could place it anywhere. I could turn it or make one side wider than the other, and basically I'm just going to push that down. You could hit this with a rubber mallet, or you could just press it by hand. Now one thing that I forgot to do, which is advisable, is to dust the surface of this object, whatever it is that you're pushing into the clay with a little cornstarch. And then that way it'll release quite easily. So you've got a soap dish. Really all you need to do is just let that stiffen a bit. You could set this off on a board and soften the edges, and then after that you could flip it over after it has a chance to dry, roll up little balls of clay, which I will do here, and just throw them on the table. That'll flatten them out. Scratch the surface here, scratch the surface at the corner of this impression, push it in there, and just squeeze those little legs up. And I think what that does is it makes it rest on a flat surface a little, or an uneven surface, I should say, a little more comfortably, and it gives it a little more of a sense of presence, and maybe a little more volume.